Welcome back to AI Explained. Today we're doing a deep dive on something pretty important, the energy consumption and environmental impact of AI.
Yeah.
We've all been hearing about this AI boom, and it's for good reason. I mean, these tools are changing everything.
It really is an exciting time to be following this. I mean, we're seeing AI used in just about every industry. Healthcare, transportation, even entertainment.
I know. And with new breakthroughs all the time, the possibilities seem endless.
Yeah.
Think about ChatGPT. It can write you a story, translate languages, answer your questions in a way that almost feels human. And then there's Sora, making realistic videos from just a few lines of text.
Those are really great examples. They really highlight the incredible progress that's been made.
Yeah, and as with any new technology, we need to consider the potential downsides.
Absolutely.
And one of the big ones with AI is its energy footprint.
Mm.
All this AI magic comes at a cost measured in megawatts.
Yeah.
Data center emissions in the U.S. have actually tripled since 2018.
Wow.
That's a lot more energy use.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is driven by AI.
That's a really startling statistic. It really does make you think about how sustainable this all is, especially as AI keeps evolving. So to really understand the scope, I think we need to start with the basics.
Okay, what exactly are data centers, and why do they use so much energy?
Well, imagine a massive warehouse filled with thousands and thousands of servers, all working together to store information. These servers are like the brains behind AI.
Right.
They need a ton of electricity to run 24/7. And it's not even just the computing power, it's the cooling systems to keep all those servers from overheating.
So it's like keeping a whole city cool during a heat wave.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of buildings, it's a warehouse full of computers. No wonder they're such energy hogs.
Exactly. They generate an incredible amount of heat. Just keeping them cool takes a ton of energy. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Figuring out how much energy is used just by AI. That's a real challenge.
Why is that? I mean, with all the data we have these days, you'd think we'd have precise measurements.
You would think so, right? The truth is, data centers handle a lot of different tasks. Website hosting, data storage, running all sorts of applications. So separate out how much is just from AI. It's like trying to figure out how much electricity your refrigerator uses compared to everything else in your kitchen. It's really complex. There's still a lot of uncertainty around the exact numbers.
So we don't have the exact numbers.
Yeah.
But we know that AI is using more and more energy,
Right.
especially as we go from just text-based AI to these more complex models,
Silly.
like the ones that generate images and videos.
Yeah. This shift from text to multimodal AI, it represents a major leap in complexity and data requirements.
So instead of processing lines of text, these models are dealing with massive amounts of visual and audio data.
Right. Think about the difference between reading a book and watching a high-definition movie. The amount of information is just vastly different.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the energy demands are only going to increase as these multimodal models get more sophisticated.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important factor, the location of data centers.
Okay, so location matters. How so?
Well, a staggering 95% of U.S. data centers, they're located in areas that use dirtier energy sources than the national average.
Wow, dirtier energy.
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. When we talk about dirty energy, we're talking about things like coal and oil. They release a lot of greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change.
Okay.
These are in contrast to cleaner energy sources, like solar and wind power, which have a much smaller impact on the environment.
So you're saying most data centers, these huge energy consumers,
Right.
are being powered by the most polluting sources.
Yeah.
That's a pretty unsettling thought.
It's definitely a big concern, and it's driven by a couple different factors. First, data centers need constant energy to work properly. Coal-fired power plants, they can provide that consistent energy, unlike solar or wind power, which can be inconsistent depending on the weather.
Right. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
Yeah.
But it seems like we're prioritizing constant energy over the environmental consequences.
There's definitely a tension there, and it's not even just about reliable energy, it's also about cost and availability. Coal is often cheaper than cleaner options, especially in certain regions. So for data centers looking to save money, it's an attractive option.
So it's a mix of things, reliability, cost, and availability. But the bottom line is, the location of these data centers has a huge impact on the environment.
Absolutely. And as these AI models get more complex and use even more energy, the location of these centers becomes even more important.
Yeah, it all sounds pretty daunting. Makes you wonder if there's any hope for sustainable AI.
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the effort to better track data center energy use, the potential for regulation to curb emissions, and what you can do to make a difference.
Looking forward to it.
Picking up where we left off, one of the biggest challenges is this. The lack of precise data on energy use in data centers. It's really hard to get a clear picture of how much energy they actually use and where that energy comes from.
You mentioned this before, and it's been bugging me. You'd think in our data-driven world, we'd have a better handle on something as basic as that.
I know, right? But the reality is, the data we have is all over the place, spread out between different organizations. There hasn't really been a standard way to track and report this information.
So how can we even start to fix the problem if we don't have the right data? It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but with some of the pieces missing.
Yeah, and that's where some researchers come in. They've developed a portal to provide more reliable data on data center emissions all across the country.
So like a one-stop shop for all the information.
Exactly.
That sounds like a great step. Having all that in one place can really help see the bigger picture and figure out where we can make the most impact. But what's the long-term goal? Is it just about collecting data? Or is there a plan to use this data to actually reduce emissions?
The goal is definitely to influence policy, to give policymakers the information they need so they can make more informed decisions about regulations. This portal is about bringing this problem to light.
Yeah, regulation is a tricky thing, though, especially with an industry that moves as fast as tech. There's always this back and forth between protecting the environment and making sure we don't stifle innovation.
It's a tough balance, for sure, and regulation is part of it, but it's not the only answer. There's a lot of hope for technological innovation within AI.
So the idea is that AI can help solve the problems it creates.
Exactly. Companies like Google and OpenAI, they have a big incentive to reduce energy costs and to minimize their impact on the environment. It's good for the planet, and it's good for their business.
So what are some promising developments in this area?
Well, a lot of companies are investing in renewable energy to power their data centers. Google, for example, they've committed to using only carbon-free energy by 2030. It's a huge commitment, but it sets a great example.
Wow, that is big.
Yeah, and there are a lot of companies working on more energy-efficient hardware and algorithms. It's like designing a car to get better gas mileage.
So making AI itself more efficient can reduce its energy needs? It seems like more and more tech companies are realizing that sustainability is really important.
It's not just an option anymore. It has to be a core part of AI development.
It's not even just about being altruistic. Consumers really care about the environmental impact of the things they use.
Yeah.
So companies that are focused on sustainability will have an advantage.
Right. It's a win-win. Sustainable AI is good for the planet and good for business.
I like that. But what about individuals? Is there anything we can do to help?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and it's something we'll talk more about in the last part of our deep dive. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this, but individual choices really can make a difference.
So we've talked about how much energy AI uses and the impact it has on the environment. It's a little scary, honestly.
Yeah.
But are there things that people like us can actually do to make a difference?
For sure, yeah. It's easy to feel like anything we do is just a tiny drop in the bucket, but every bucket is made up of drops, right? And with AI, the choices we make really can add up.
So what can people do? I'm not going to build a solar farm in my backyard.
Right. Well, a good place to start is to be more mindful of how we use AI. Do you really need to make a video with AI for every social media post?
Oh man, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just get caught up in how cool it is. I forget about all the energy it takes.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Maybe save it for something special.
Good point.
And if you use AI for work, or even for research, there are even more ways to save energy.
Like what?
Well, you can think about the AI models you use. Some of them use a lot more energy than others. It's like choosing between a gas guzzler and a fuel-efficient car.
Oh, okay.
And the data you use matters too. Sometimes you can get the same results with a smaller data set.
So it's all about being efficient.
Exactly. Just like turning off the lights when you leave a room.
I could do that.
And when millions of people make these small changes, it can really add up.
That makes sense. What about the companies making all these AI tools?
Well, they have a big role to play too. And a lot of them are really stepping up. We talked about this earlier. But there's definitely been a shift in the industry. Sustainability is becoming more and more important.
And it makes sense for them financially, too.
Yeah.
Lower energy costs mean more profits.
Exactly. And when customers start choosing more sustainable products, it gives those companies a real advantage.
Makes sense. So what about governments? Is there anything they can do, like policies or regulations?
That's where things get a bit more complicated. We need to strike a balance. Encouraging innovation, but also protecting the environment. One idea that's been talked about is carbon pricing for data centers. So companies would pay based on how much carbon they emit.
It seems fair.
Yeah. And there's also been talk about requiring them to be more transparent about their energy use, kind of like a nutrition label for AI.
I like it. Transparency is so important. That way customers can make more informed choices.
Exactly.
Well, it seems like we're at a crucial point. AI is changing the world, and it's up to all of us to make sure it's a sustainable change.
I completely agree. The choices we make today will have a big impact on the future.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue, but I think there's hope. If we all work together, we can have the benefits of AI without destroying the planet.
Yeah.
If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to AI Explained for more deep dives like this one. We'll be back soon. Until then, keep those AI brains buzzing, but keep an eye on those energy bills.